Darth Vader's suit is one of the most interesting and iconic looks in all of Star Wars. It was tall, menacing, and carried all the authority one would need as a Dark Lord of the Sith, though it was not without its setbacks. A burning question in many people's minds is why didn't he just get a new suit? As one of the highest ranking members of the Empire, surely he had the means to do so. Well friends, today you found the right place for your answer. Stick with us, as we will explore why Vader refused the new suit, as well as what we know about the new suit, with this serving as a revamped explanation of something that we have made previously. If you haven't watched our video about Vader's first year in his suit, I highly recommend you do so, as we go into much detail explaining all of his injuries and the appropriate measures his suit takes in order to keep him alive and functioning. But to recap, it wasn't the severing of his limbs that crippled him. Yes, that was a hindrance and made it somewhat more difficult to use the Force at first. However, the real horror of Vader's existence began with his burns. On Mustafar, Anakin suffered 4th degree burns on nearly his whole body. These burns extended past his outer skin and into his very muscle, his bones, and even his organs. His suit was designed as a mobile life support system for him, and also doubled as punishment, specifically designed by Palpatine for his loss at the hands of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Sidious never dreamed that Vader could possibly lose to Obi-Wan. As Sidious had said before, he never really saw Obi-Wan as anything special. He wasn't the most talented duelist of the Jedi Order, nor the strongest within the Force. He may have been a hindrance, but a threat he was not. If anything, Sidious considered Obi-Wan to be nothing more than an emotional hurdle for Anakin, as he told Yoda, "You cannot stop me. Soon, Lord Vader will become more powerful than either of us." A quick side note here, I find it interesting that Sidious would say such a thing, as to heretofore he has been more interested in his own survival than anyone else's. As a Sith, he is on his 3rd apprentice with Anakin. Maul and Dooku have either been slain or cast aside. In the Book of the Sith, we see that Palpatine believes the rule of 2 ends with him, and explicitly makes it known that he isn't interested in a successor, and he plans to rule forever with Vader essentially as his lapdog. This way of thinking is a drastic change from his expectancy that Vader would ever surpass him. I believe it is possible that Sidious no longer saw Anakin as worthy to surpass him after his humiliating defeat on the volcanic planet of Mustafar, although this was his original intention. Thus, he designed Vader a suit purposefully made of obsolete and subpar material. The suit barely held Anakin together, doing the bare minimum to give him motor function and survivability, but nothing more than was absolutely necessary. The suit was a living hell. His new robotic limbs were cumbersome and sometimes slow to respond. The respirator on the front was connected by dozens of wires into his chest and into his lungs to manually help him breathe. There was a long tube that was inserted through his trachea in the case that the suit should fail, for whatever reason, allowing Vader to momentarily still breathe, so that he could still manage to breathe for a short amount of time, not to mention all the wires within his throat, that they were placed there in order to aid his voice and convert it electronically from what would have otherwise been a whisper due to his damaged vocal cords. The inside of the suit wasn't properly lined and didn't fit as well, which caused the metal to painfully snag on his burned flesh as he moved. If all this weren't enough, the suit was incredibly clunky. The boots were so heavy, Vader felt as if they were rooted to the ground, and with the raised heel, he was constantly on a forward tilt, which risked him toppling over at any given moment. Inside his helmet, he had some modules inserted in his ears to help him hear, as his eardrums had been melted as well. These hearing aids, like the rest of the suit, were of very poor quality. Vader would state that it sometimes sounded as though everything was underwater. The audio sensors didn't differentiate between nearby sounds and ambient sounds, which made it difficult to pick up which direction certain noises were coming from. So now, with all that underway, why didn't Vader just get a new suit himself? The answer has multiple layers. You see, he was indeed offered the chance at a completely new and improved suit that had vastly better systems and movement controls, which would allow him to move nearly as good as he used to as Anakin. It would have fit comfortably and had much better audio systems. The issue came when the prospect of actually moving Vader into the new suit cropped up. There was a new suit built and ready for Vader to enter. However, he may actually die if he switched over. With all the wires and systems that kept Vader alive, there was a high risk of death during the operation. Each system served a specific function, and disconnecting him from it all at once, even for a second, could spell his doom. They would have to completely rewire his respiratory system and heartbeat regulator. In the time it would take to do that, Vader could die. Had Sidious been inclined to help him, perhaps he could use the dark side to sustain Vader during the transition. But of course by then, there was no way that Sidious was just going to hold Vader's hand and help him become more powerful. The risk was too high, so Vader refused. Another reason is quite interesting. The way the dark side works is through pain, anger, and suffering, and Vader, of all people, had a monopoly of suffering. At his disposal at a whim, his literal body was meant to suffer. Yes, inconvenient would be a kind of word to describe the suit and all of its pains and frustrations. However, the never-ending suffering, aches, and pains and lack of sleep would ultimately fuel Vader's connection to the dark side. He drew upon his terrible existence to provide him more power in combat. Vader did eventually make some minor adjustments to his own suit, ensuring that it would be at least useful. He upgraded his own cybernetic limbs to where they would be strong enough to crush a lightsaber. One can't help but wonder though, how differently the events of Star Wars would have gone if Vader had a better suit. What if Vader perhaps used a back-to-tank to move from one suit to the other with a successful surgery? I believe the duel with Luke in Return of the Jedi would have gone very differently. There would be no way that Luke, even with the dark side, could overpower a fully functional Vader. The real question would be, would he be strong enough for the Emperor? Vader's new suit would be upgraded to not be so conductive of electricity, as it has once been designed specifically by Palpatine. Palpatine placed this within Vader's suit to make him always weak to his most powerful ability. Not to mention his mobility would have been drastically increased, to the point that he may have had the same from when he was a Jedi. Vader, with all of the strength, speed, and near power as Anakin, would be truly terrifying. But what would he look like without his suffering? Maybe then he would have a shot at accomplishing the ultimate goal of surpassing and taking his revenge on Sidious. But again, he would give up all of this suffering, and all of the dark side fueling his body and emotion. Could Vader within the suit actually prove to be more powerful than the Vader in a brand new suit? A question that unfortunately may never be answered. So friends, what do you think of this subject? Do you think that Vader should have kept trying for a new suit, or was he smart in playing it safe and keeping his old suit, along with all of the hindrances and suffering that came with it? Make sure to comment down below your thoughts on his choices. As always, ladies and gentlemen, may the Force be with you and have a great day.